please welcome the incredible, the best cheerleader in the world, Susie Moore.
Renee Warren, I am looking forward to this conversation. I have been for ages. Happy New Year. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So if you don't follow Susie, she is, long story short is I met you in person at a really awesome mastermind, a couple months ago now, a month and a bit ago now.
Yes, yeah.
And at the end of the 2 days, we were asked a question, who has had like one of the biggest lessons and who has had some of the biggest impacts on you in the last 2 days. Mm-hmm. And it's funny how you get these default people. Like I was inspired by people in that room and I learned a lot from people in that room. But my default was, who was the biggest cheerleader? Because for me, going into this room of people that were just incredible, I was so nervous and intimidated. And I'm like, what advice do I have to offer this room? And so, and I changed the perspective when I was there. And then I met you. And I was like, oh my gosh, this woman makes me feel seen and heard. And she's so full of like the way you can just navigate a conversation, but also make sure everybody has a chance to talk and asking the right questions was like so beautiful. And it's just like a deep reflection of the person that you are.
Oh, Renee, thank you. I think that whenever I see someone who's got so much to offer, I'm like, let's go. Yeah. We don't need to wait even one more minute. Like, let's do it now. I always joke, that's, the next book is going to be called Do It Now, the next book. But I just think, when someone has as much to offer as you, like, let's just get rolling. What are we waiting for? We're only here for a short time.
It's true. You're like, okay, well then here's the thing, this, and this. And I remember sitting in our breakout and we're like Bonnie Christine and Jim Quick and Jenna Kutcher. And I was like, oh my God, I have to now confess my biggest issues in my business right now. And I said the thing and you're like, okay, what about this, and this? I'm like, oh yeah, it was so beautiful. But it felt like, yeah, you were a cheerleader. And I love that. The cheerleaders are easy to spot, but also hard to find at the same time. You know what I mean?
I think that's why it's kind of nice to be one where you can. And we can't all do it all the time. Sometimes our moods aren't there. Sometimes, we're going through stuff, so that life has many ups and downs. But I think that sometimes if we can almost just offer what we can with them in the most loving way, then that's enough. Like, we don't have to be perfect even. Just the encouragement itself can be enough, I think. And it goes a long way. I mean, when you even think about when you were a kid and someone just kind of could see something for you or believed in something, it means a lot. And we hold on to that. And so, thank you, Renee.
Yeah. And so who was it the other day that shared something on social and I tagged you? I was like, yeah.
Oh, yes. I saw that. It was a man who was talking about, I think, taking immediate action.
Oh, I think it was Eric. Eric was the gentleman. Yes, exactly. Okay. So let's dive into this because you're the queen of many things, but one of which is public relations. And it's interesting because for the longest time, I thought you were in PR. And I thought that meant like you ran an agency because you're really good at what you do. So tell us really quickly, what is it that you focus on? Your zone of genius. And then we're going to dabble into like the PR things.
Yes. Well, you know how it is, Renee, if someone asks you what you do, it's almost like a bit of a tricky question unless you're something very specific. So my answer kind of changes often based on audience. I'll say I'm an author. I'll say I'm a life coach. If I'm with entrepreneurs who I can help with some media strategy, I'll lean into that. But, essentially, I have a corporate background. I worked in the tech sector, in the software industry, programmatic video advertising for over a decade in San Francisco and New York. And I just always wanted to be a life coach. I love encouraging. I know that there are always solutions for every problem, more than one solution. I'm good talking about heavy stuff. I don't think we need to be heavy to heal either. But I love people. And I started my life coach as a side hustler at the evenings and weekends when I was working in my tech career. And I just knew I wanted it to be full time. Of course I had this trickle of clients and that was cool. But I was like, how can I make this a full-time reality? And I thought, look, if I've got this dream in my heart, there has to be the mechanics of its fulfillment. Right? I wouldn't just have this dream without a way to get there. It exists. I just need to identify it. And then I noticed that even the way that I'd get one-on-one clients as a life coach was I'd tell my stories. I'd speak about losing my father to addiction, happily, openly speaking about this is the reality of life for a lot of people. I'd speak about being divorced in my 20s. I'd speak about growing up on welfare. I would just tell my stories. I always have a positive, I'm like an Olympic level optimist, and the right people, so my people would find me. They would just go, oh, could you help me talk through this? Or could you help me work through this? And I'd go, yeah, I actually do this. I work on this if you want to work with me. So I would just share stories, be generous with what it is that I could offer. And then every day in my cubicle, counting down till 5 o'clock, I'd read stuff online like anyone else, right? I'd be on HuffPost, Marie Claire, Mind, Body, Green, Glamour, Cosmo. And then I started to look at the content through the lens of a life coach. And I noticed that a lot of the content that the publications that I read liked to cover was stuff I'd love to coach on, like women's confidence, things to say and not say, spirituality, productivity. And then simply one day, I was living in New York at the time. I was meeting a friend for drinks. I was a bit early. She was a bit late. I'm always early. And without thinking too much, right? Underthink it is one of my mantras. I submitted 600 words to Mind, Body, Green on my tablet at the bar, with a martini. And 2 weeks later, I had my first author page, my first guest post, and it was shared nearly, it was 3,000 or 4,000 times.
Wow.
And I was like, this is it. There is a way. And Renee, I've kept going ever since.
Cocaine. You're like,
I was like, this is it. I was like, it was better than anything. And I was like, there is a way. This is it. And truly, ever since then, that was 2014, I have kept going ever since. It's been 10 years.
2014.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I started in PR in 2012.
Oh, fantastic. So at the same time, pretty much.
Same time.
Mm-hmm.
And man, the game was different 10 years ago. It's shifted. We'll talk about that in a minute, though. So so the story goes, now you've used your tablet. I mean, obviously it takes a tablet and a martini for you to be a professional contributed author. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now this thing goes crazy and you're like, next, what happened next?
I was immediately ready for next. So I then, that was Mind, Body, Green. Then I went to the Huffington Post. Then I went to Marie Claire. Then I went to Business Insider. And at that point, Renee, I didn't have a website. I was completely new, right? I had a Gmail address and a Twitter account.
Wasn't a Hotmail? That's good. At least you started there.
Oh gosh, that's really going back. But I was like, this is it. All I have to do is show up, be generous, write for free, create content for free, and offer some type of link, some opportunity to work with me. It's instead of selling, it's I get to share, I get to inform and then invite. I get to just say who I am and how I see the world. And then the right people click through to, I got my act together and, created an opt-in and all those things. But it started really working. My email list grew. I had one-on-one, I created a wait list. I had all these one-on-one inbound requests. And then interestingly, I didn't know this would happen. I got a lot of media requests from my media. So the more you're out there, right, speaking about your topic, the more you get known as the expert in that topic. So I would just keep going, and I would do it before work. I do it at lunchtime. I have this mantra truly about not thinking that it's my job to be perfect. I just show up, and the right people for me find me. I don't put pressure on myself really to be original, to be completely wildly profound, to be Ernest Hemingway. I'm like, I'm just me. That's enough. And I think that allows you to create at volume.
Okay.
That self-permission. Mm-hmm.
We had a client, and I mean, we've had several clients, but this one was the ultimate start to success story when it came to this process and getting media coverage. We did a lot of contributed content for him, for Business Insider, Entrepreneur, Forbes. We wrote weekly LinkedIn articles. And so there was lots of content being pumped out there that was free.
Yes.
Right? So no one was paying us. And then one article was really, really good. It was something like how I retired at 27. That was not the title, but it was quite juicy. And that got picked up by Fox News. It got syndicated to Yahoo Finance. And then it's the one article that just tipped the scale. That was the leverage we needed to pitch him to bigger media. And he got a full segment on the Steve Harvey show.
Yes.
Right? And you were like, well, dude, I just want that. I was like, that took 2 years.
There you go.
2 years. Right? And that was also back in the day. I don't know if that still applies. But anyways, probably does. The point being is the moral of the story in all of this is it takes repetition. Put in the reps. Doing it. And then you're going to get some articles that are flops. Some that are shared 7,000 times.
You know what's so interesting? I heard, Renee, maybe you know the specific statistic, but it's less than 2% of podcasts that have more than 10 episodes. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So people give up so soon. They think, I'm putting out one piece of content. Why aren't I a millionaire yet? You know, or I've put out 5 YouTube videos. Why isn't Oprah calling? You know, it's like, come on, friends. You know, like there is naturally a journey. We get better. There's always going to be a path. We're meant to enjoy this process, right? I think we live with such attachment sometimes. We forget about the whole desire and the engagement of being part of creating something and building something. And I think we've got a bit entitled. We're like, I do this, so I deserve, and we don't deserve anything. It's like, how are you showing up? Is it valuable? Are you being yourself? Are you doing this consistently? There's nothing mystical about success, right? It's not like, oh, one day I'll wake up speaking perfect French. You practice French. It's a process. Like, you know, one day, you can't even buy it. But it's the same people, you know, they spend a lot on PR firms. They're like, if I even drop 6 figures, then that will get me wins. That's not even necessarily true. I've had people who've come to me when their books are out and they're like, I've spent 6 figures or more. I'm not getting a morning show. And I'm like, well, you know, these are relationships you build ahead of time. This is work that takes a bit of compounding. There can be some luck and there can be some connections. But I find that when you're just consistent and organic and you're doing it yourself in a way that's pleasurable for you, it's amazing how things can take off when you also take the pressure off yourself.
Yeah. And it always comes back to the reps, like even the intros. Hey, can you introduce me to so-and-so? So Dan, when he was doing his book tour, the way that he worked with podcasts. So I helped him with the initial launch of his book, but then he just got the momentum. And like the moment you get like those big shows or the big media outlets, that's the leverage. You're like, hey, I was just on Into the Wild. So now I can use this as leverage to pitch Joe Rogan. Totally relevant. Exactly. He would say he'd get invited onto these in-person shows in like Salt Lake City. And the host would be like, would love to have you. And then Dan goes, this is very simple math is, hey, do you know anybody else in Salt Lake that has studios that would take me as a guest? And all of a sudden 5 shows are booked because he asked for it. But it's not like because of him being on these big shows, now all of a sudden everybody wants him. And it's same for everybody. You have to keep showing up. And I think of people like Marie Forleo and Amy Porterfield who know they're known for their industry. They're still doing the thing that they're really good at. They're still showing up.
Exactly. And when you think about, so, you know, Dan asking someone in Salt Lake City, he asks, right? Which might be uncomfortable for some people, but the way that I define a confident person is someone who's willing to be uncomfortable, even just for a few seconds. Like, hey, is there anyone else you suggest? It's a brilliant question. But then he's also willing to, you know, zip around Salt Lake City, showing up for an hour in random places and spend an hour with each host, right? And he's probably not doing deep research. He's like, well, I trust this referral and I trust this, checking it out, you know, but like he's not going, you know, I'm just going to take a spa day today, or I'm just going to, and there's nothing wrong with that. Do that too. But he's still going around giving value for probably an hour, every single time. And I think that the most successful people among us, we're never tired of our work, right? One of my favorite guests I've ever had and who's a huge influence to me is Byron Katie. And so I don't know how old she is now, but I believe she's over 80. I don't want to look it up because she needs to live forever. She needs to live forever. Like I'm so in love with her. She can never die.
Cameron needs to live forever too.
Yes. But she's showing up. She's like, I care about relieving suffering. Like that is her mission. And so I think that when that's part of it too, people can tell.
Oh yeah.
You know, people know. And that's why if you have someone else write your book for you, have someone else book your media, and again, there's nothing wrong, right or wrong, but I think the audiences know. And then the rise of AI, your authenticity, telling your own stories, remaining true to you, I think it's getting easier and easier to stand out because information isn't valuable anymore. It's available to everybody, to kids.
It's crazy. I mean, we use ChatGPT for so much, and it is not like the verbatim of what is pumped out, but it is like, inspire me, please. Yeah. And so here's the con to this, like AI in a way, is that now people are expecting more faster. And you can't replace the creative, you can't replace the human element. And I see this in PR all the time, even HARO queries to help a reporter out. Yeah. The bottom of every query is like, no AI allowed. So essentially it's like everything has to be original. And I really hope that if you're in PR, everything you're doing is original.
Right? Yeah, and this is why too, like, so over the years, naturally a lot of media professionals have become my friends, right? Editors and producers who I've worked with, who come to my live events, et cetera, et cetera. And they know. They just know. You know, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine recently who's an editor, and she said she had to get back to 2 contributors saying they use the same word, nestle. ChatGPT apparently uses this word nestle, and she's like, sorry, you have to write this. Yeah. Like I think we know, like I can even tell if I put together even a quick email, driving people to something with a link, I'm like, that just sounds so cheesy. Yeah. You know? Oh, I know. Like, hey, it's some bones. I can work with that, but I can't live on that. It's everyone's going to know, and I can't live with myself. Like, so yeah. I think leaning into just the reality of you, how you speak, using helps and prompts and getting support is good, but being yourself, I mean, that's why we're all here, isn't it? I mean,
it's totally it.
To be ourselves.
Okay, so then let's talk about this stuff. I mean, AI is cool. Love it. It's definitely helpful. The first time I've ever seen it outside of knowing that it's running or unknowingly running in the background outside of ChatGPT was when I recorded a Loom video, and it usually would just put like the date as a timestamp for the title. And now what it does is it suggests the title based on what you've said in the video. And when I saw it live typing in front of I was like, whoa, okay, this is AI that I didn't even know was running in the background. Yeah. Right. So a lot of us think of AI only as ChatGPT. No, there's so much stuff that's happening. We don't even know it, like from dishwashers to Roombas to refrigerators.
Yes. You know, Renee, I have a French tutor who I work with weekly. And at the end, I use a system called iTalki where you book one-on-one. And at the end of each session, I get an AI roundup, like what I need to work on, like biggest takeaway. I'm like, wow. See, this is such a tool that we can work with, but let's not lose ourselves.
Seriously. Right. There's these inserts you can put in ski boots now. There's like these little monitors, and then it connects to your phone, and then you wear your earbuds, and it tells you based on like weight distribution and all this stuff, how to become a better skier.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And is it crazy that like in a few years, people are going to think it was crazy that we thought it was crazy? You know?
Totally. Be like, what? You vacuumed your house with an actual vacuum cleaner? Did you brush your teeth with your hand? Like, that's weird to me.
I know. I think, you know, but the way that I think about it is if we're given all of these conveniences, then there should be more time for what matters. Right. Because it's so easy to be given all these conveniences. Think about like the phone, right? You find your man, you find your house, you find your vacation, you find your lunch, you find everything on your phone, right? Like, it can solve your whole life, but then we're more addicted to our phones than ever. We have almost like less time than ever. So I think that's where it can get a little tricky, and we need to be conscious.
That is a really good point. You'd think that with all this automation now that it would give you the capacity to enjoy more things in life. I just see people working harder now than ever.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting? It's like you used to have to go out to bars and meet people and like find a single dude. And then you used to have to like ask around town, go to a real estate agent and go, what's available? Go to a travel agent, help them plan, you know, and now you can do it all yourself really, really quickly, but we are more overworked and more burnt out.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity. So we're trying to fill those moments with something else. And this is why we're getting sick. But all of this, coming back to the PR side of things too, is where do you see, so like maybe some of your predictions. So where do you see PR? Wait, let me rephrase this. Your experience 10 years ago gosh, 10 years ago, and getting that article published on, what was it? Mind, Body, Green?
Mind, Body, Green, yes.
Okay. And that process now was a huge foundation for you. I say like the OGs in the space are the ones that figured it out and now are the ones that are keeping on with it. Like Jenna Kutcher is a perfect example of being like the OG in the Pinterest. And now look at her, right? Amy Porterfield in course creation.
Yeah.
You in life coaching and in media. And now the competition is harder. Even I was listening to a podcast today of a woman who's a social media expert. Those exist. They exist based because they know off the analytics that are updated However, she said that things like that we thought were the table stakes of social last year are totally different this year. It's like it's a 60-second video, not a 6-second video. You don't use hashtags anymore. Only use keyword. It's just crazy. So PR. What is happening in this world right now?
The way that I think about it is, with social media having such leaps and bounds in the past decade, audience fragmentation is just higher than ever, right? There isn't just the same amount of volume in any one site or any concentrated attention in any few media outlets. Like there will never be another Oprah Winfrey show, Renee. Like there never, ever will be that again. Like all eyes on one television during a certain time of day for a show that's like recorded that just, it's so clearly number one. That will never be the case anymore. But I think this isn't necessarily bad. With fragmentation, we see, of course, a lot of audiences spending a lot of time on social. That will never change. The rules there are always shifting too. But what I see is we still see lots of different media outlets merging. I contribute to Wondermind, which is Selena Gomez's mental health organization, which has got a really incredible board and so forth. But I think that the media outlets that are really connecting and thriving, the content has gotten so much better. Like it's almost like it has to. And I think that it doesn't mean better in terms of very qualified people giving expert opinions, but we have to we can't kind of fake it. You used to be able to go 5 steps to happiness, 2 tips to a happy marriage. Like it used to, and there was always a home for that content. And look, there probably still is, but I think we have to dig a little deeper with our stories. That's a thing that stands out. It's a thing that can't be responded to by a good prompt in any AI platform. And I think that we probably want to experiment a bit more. And instead of just thinking, I only want a national show or I only want, this magazine or that kind of brand, the audiences aren't only just concentrated in the tier A media that we used to just, kind of bow to. They're everywhere. And I'm surprised every day, Renee, with media outlets that I've never heard of that are huge, that are in specific niches, that are covering stories that are kind of controversial, different, a bold perspective. I think we want to be more standout than ever before. We used to be maybe a little bit more gentle, a bit more kind of vanilla-y content that would just kind of work, listicles even. I hear mixed reviews on whether or not they're still relevant. I think they are. But I think that if you're really yourself and you're finding your people online, you're always going to be fine. Like the audiences are there so long as you are being you. I mean, this is the one thing that can't be replaced or bought, or no one can stand in for you. I had this conversation with someone recently about, income. Why do some people earn a certain income, others don't in the same field? Even if they do similar work. And there's so much to this, right? It's what we believe we're worth, what we believe about the world, et cetera, et cetera. But the way that I think about it is, how irreplaceable are you? So Renee, just say you were sick today. No one can just step in and go, I'm going to do that. Right? You couldn't just go, hey, Nancy, or, hey, Leslie, whoever your friends are. Could you just do this interview today? Like, that's not how it works. It's you, it's your audience, it's your brand, it's your listeners. And so I think that's how we become irreplaceable. That's how we become most known to our people and connected to them, showing up for them, being consistent, and always just growing it, looking for new creative ways to grow it while just remaining you and evolving you, but remaining you.
Yeah. And you're right about the never having an Oprah show again.
Yeah.
And even like what Oprah's created now, it's being replicated by so many other people. And you're right about it being spread thin, which I think overwhelms a lot of people too. Well, where do we go? Who do we pitch? What's the best person to connect with? What about these collaborations? So what do you say to that?
Can I just say quickly, when I was, when my last book came out, I was at Pilates and someone joked that it should be Oprah's book club read, right? Your friends always joke about these cool things. And a girl in the studio, she was young. I think she was a student at the university here. She said, "Who is that? Who's book club?" Thinking it was like a person in Pilates. Like, I'm like, Oprah Winfrey. And she's like, here? Like at this studio? And I'm like, oh my gosh, she doesn't know who she is.
Right.
Like that is how like, and so it's up to us to remain in this, you know, in this relevant place. But is your question around like opportunities? Because there are loads, right?
Well,
like what comes to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me be more specific. There are so many places to pitch, so many collaborations that are possible. Like we talk about like the original Oprah show, and now she's doing something else. And there's a ton of people doing what Oprah's doing, not at that level. Because most people, except for those that do Pilates and are 20 years old, don't know who Oprah is.
Yes.
But it's like when you first start out, it's almost like your health journey. You want to lose an extra 50 pounds. Say it's like so discouraging because you know you have a long way to go. So in the media, it's like there's all these opportunities and it's quite overwhelming. How do you know what to look for that's a good opportunity?
The way that I think about it is, what media do you naturally like? Like, so for example, I started following Wondermind when it launched, like Selena Gomez's company, because it's mental health. And I love her and her story. She's so open about her bipolar disorder diagnosis. If you watched her documentary, I thought it was very honest. I think a lot of documentaries aren't. They show all the best parts, but hers wasn't glamorous. She said that she can't even watch it, you know? So I watch it, you guys. Like, it's called My Mind and Me. It's so good. But I always think, where am I paying attention, right? I follow Women's Health. I subscribe to them. I've been reading Marie Claire for years. I pay attention to, I love reading Katie Couric media. Like she started her own brand a couple of years ago. I subscribe to that. I get her newsletter. So often, and her audience is a little older than over 50, right? That's how they define themselves.
They know who Oprah is.
Yeah, they definitely know who Oprah is, yes. But I think to myself, what media do you naturally gravitate toward? Because probably your people are there. So Refinery 29, for example, like if you have been following that brand, you get their newsletter, you follow them on socials, and you think, gosh, I've got something to share here. Maybe it's a fertility journey or a sobriety journey or whatever it may be, probably your people are there. I just think sometimes it's deceptively simple how easy it can be to begin. Of course, you can do searches. Look on BuzzSumo, look on SimilarWeb, look on rocketreach.co for contacts. Just do some general searching. You'll see so many brands show up. You can check their audience sizes. You can look at media kits. But I think, what media do I like? And so even my pitch is going to be sincere. Because I follow it. I pay attention. I check out the content that they're posting each day. And so I would just start there. Start with the most obvious. And then, as you know, Renee, once you're out there sharing your stories, you get Google alerts, you notice you get syndication, all these things happen. You kind of, more media is just revealed to you as you go. It's like you don't need to figure out a 10-year plan. You just start with your sizzle list. I always like to start with like 50 media outlets. If I was getting started, I'd start with the most obvious 50. Some like Condé Nast Hearst, certainly, but then also some free larger platforms that maybe are a bit newer, and just go for it. Like, go for it. Share your ideas, share your stories, and that's all you have to do. After that, you'll know more. The next step will be revealed. And I think that, so we overthink so much. We overthink and underfeel, and we put so much pressure on ourselves to get it right. And there is no right or wrong. The only way to get it wrong is to not do it. So let's go. When I started pitching,
the one component missing to this too is like, what is the goal in all this? I had a client who's like, he's a real estate agent, and he had one person write some snarky article about him. And for some reason it was ranking. And so if you Googled his name, it was like the second or third search. And he's like, what do we do? I need to get in big media. I go, no, you don't. You just need to get on media that has a little bit more traffic and a bigger rank than that one. It's not like it has to be the cover of Forbes in order for it to push that article down. So we did that. I'll go also a decent social media presence can help as well. Within like a month, we had a huge, detailed, impressive article written for Authority magazine, which is like is a Medium magazine essentially. And it pushed it down. So now it's not even on the first page.
There you
like
go.
That negative, and it just happened like that. And that was his goal. So if we had gone out and said, here's the 200 media outlets we need to get his name mentioned in, right? And now he's like, okay, cool. That's great. Next, what's the next goal with PR?
Yeah, exactly. No, I love how you brought this up about the goal, because in the beginning for me, I just wanted one-on-one customers. I was like, if I just get, a one-on-one client out of this, I'll be so happy, And now I drive people to my memberships, or I drive them to my books or to my podcast to enjoy the reach and growth. And I test, right? Like, I'm like, oh, is it worth creating with this brand again? Like, is it worth contributing here again? You see the data, you see what works, you keep testing. But yeah, I mean, without a goal, we're a bit aimless, right? We're like, I just want the Spoonworthy logos. I just want and by the way, that can also be a goal. If you want to increase or elevate your credibility by putting like 5 logos on all of your marketing materials, cool. You can also, I see some companies kind of pay for this. There's even like a paid for service. Whatever suits you. But that's never been my goal. Like the logos. I mean, they're nice, they help, but I think if I want to speak to the people, like instead of I have something to say, it's like, how can I reach the people who don't know this yet? And it can be useful, maybe.
Right.
Or maybe I've learned something about this thing that they're figuring out still, and this is helpful. Then that's all isn't that all we ever really have to do as human beings? It's like the Zig Ziglar quote that you can get anything you want so long as you help other people get what they want.
Yeah. Or you ask for
Yes.
Most people don't ask.
You have to ask. And keep asking.
Well, that's like the show. And even having you on the show, it's like, you're not just going to show up without me asking.
Well, how could anything happen without someone doing something, right? Like there has to be some momentum, and we have to be the creatives of the momentum. So, and I'm so happy I'm here.
I love that Zig Ziglar quote too. And so how is the PR kind of engine for you going, and what's like the big thing that you're kind of promoting at the end of it?
So I change my call to action all the time based on what it is that I'm working on. So if it's a book, it's that. If it's blowing up my podcast, it's that I have a specific goal. And then I'll also, so for example, I love to do roundups. So for example, if I create something for Business Insider saying these top 6 podcasts will help you XYZ, I'll include myself in that podcast, and always. And then if I'm doing like, these are the 10 best business books to read at the start of the year, I'll include one of mine. If it's relevant to the Business Insider audience. And so it's always leading to a product or service, always. I also have a life coaching membership, which I love. So that's kind of my default. I'll link to an evergreen webinar. I'll share some advice, a story, and then it's like Susie Moore is and my bio changes too, based on the publication. And based on what country it's in too. And then I'll say, if you want a confidence boost, an immediate confidence boost, head over to becomeyourownlifecoach.com. So I'm always switching it up. I have fun experimenting. You never know what's going to work, Renee, right? Like you never know. Like sometimes I'm like, this is my best creative work. And it's like, it's, lukewarm response. Yeah. And then sometimes I'm like, I did this on a hangover, and like it's being translated and it's syndicated, and I'm like, oh, well, that's all, but that's also real-time data that can help you create content everywhere. Create courses, create speeches, whatever it is.
And then not knowing what worked thing is huge. So an example that just came to mind was when I was pitching Dan to be on Cal Fussman's podcast. And I had noticed on social that he was going through this really cool health journey, and he had lost weight, and he was like really into running or something. And I was like, I could just pitch him like the same old generic pitch. But also, I know that Dan has this story about also losing a lot of weight. And so that was the thing. That was like the connection point. And it was the simplest pitch. Like I was meeting somebody at a coffee shop, and he said yes. He goes, I didn't know, like I've heard of him before, but I didn't know he went through this. This is a great story. So and it could have flopped too. There's so many ways it could have gone. He could have been insulted. Like but I'm like, oh, I don't know. This looks good. I'm going to just send it out there. Like sometimes there's no formula. It's
right.
You got to do it.
You just got to do it. And then also, I think sometimes things are divine. Like it's meant to, that was a good match. You know, like you said, it might not have worked, but it did work. You trusted your intuition on it. Amazing. Also, podcast pitching is slightly different because you are appealing to an individual host, right? It's not like under the umbrella of the Wall Street Journal, for example, where that's a brand versus, like to pitch Renee Warren and to understand what your journey is, the fact that you've got 2 sons, you live in Canada, these are what your interests are. So I think that kind of understanding, what is it that the media want, whether it's traditional media, newer media like podcasting, and, just tailoring it a bit, putting in like that little bit of, I joke that, a few minutes of homework saves hours of hustle, right? Like what matters? Like, this happened to me the other day, which goes to show that we all, mess up. I pitched one of my editors and she's like, we just did that piece. It was about the loneliness epidemic. And I was speaking about, anyway, she just said, oh, we actually just published that. And I'm like, I should have checked.
Yeah.
It's almost like, oh, I'm just so used to this. This is an easy win. And I'm like, she's like, oh, that's a great idea. So good. We just published a piece on it. And I'm like, oh.
Now, had you written the post or the article already?
No, it was just a pitch idea. So then I took it somewhere else. So, and that's the thing. There is a home for every piece. Yeah. Don't give up. And that's why pitching is so great. You don't do the work ahead of time. You just put together 250 words, essentially, right? Who cares? So what, why you in a pitch, right? That's it. And then when you get a yes, then the work begins, but it's worth it because you know where it's a sure thing. You're guaranteed your author page, your cred, your links, all the things.
Yeah. And it's all about the reps.
Oh, yes.
Not giving. And here's the thing too, is like we will write angles and subject lines for the same thing in like 20 different ways. Yes. And it just evolves and we massage it and we tweak it. We add things, we remove things. It's not like here's the pitch and you're going to just do this all the time. Mm-hmm. And also your story evolves. The things that you're talking about evolve. So those need to be changed as well. Mm-hmm. I think what we also failed to do is also talk about the things that might not be directly relevant to the person we're pitching, but is intriguing and it's interesting. Like the story of Dan and Cal, their weight loss journey had nothing to do with Buy Back Your Time, the book, but that's what we were promoting.
It's interesting, isn't it? I find that if ever I have a connection with somebody, I always want to lean into it. I mean, and it's endless how you can do this. And I don't mean like a super generic connection either. Like, I love basketball too, right? And I don't even like basketball.
Because you're 5, how tall are you?
I'm 5'5". Wink. Yeah. I'm 5'5", you guys. But I think, what can you lean into? I just think to myself, there is so much information out there. People share so much. There's no excuse to be kind of lazy. There is so much information that people their whole lives online. And if you want a specific editor somewhere or a specific producer somewhere, where they're vacationing, what their values are, what they care about, what they dislike. Often people are very, very vocal. So what's something authentic to connect on? And how can you let it be easy? Right. It's the stuff that most people, that's easy not to do, but it's also very easy to do. Just most people kind of aren't willing to do that, like to go that slight extra distance. Yeah.
Okay. Let me tell you a little quick story that just happened this week.
Okay.
So, and then I was reminded that I would be interviewing you today and looking at your stuff and like, let it be easy. It kept coming to me. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm complicating this. So I don't know if you experienced this, but something happened with RSS feeds for some podcasts where it created a duplicate show on Spotify.
Okay.
I didn't know. And we just discovered this one day and I was like, what do we do? So my producer, my assistant, we did some research and we determined the best thing to do was to delete the one that had the lowest amount of reviews.
Okay.
And I was like, well, that's probably going to sting somewhere, but anyway, this was like a couple months ago. And we check our analytics all the time by the way of using a platform called Listen Notes. And our rank was going up and I was like, this is great. And because RSS feeds take a while to register depending on the software, it finally registered to the point where our stats tanked. They dipped down to the same level of people who are just starting, or shows that haven't updated shows in 3 years. And I was devastated because I work so hard on this show, put so much money and time and collecting like really great conversations. The show still exists, but I was like, am I complicating this? Maybe Susie would think that I'm not letting this be easy. Renee, what are you doing? Like for me, it was that pivotal moment of I have been on the fence. Do I just pause the show for a little bit? Do I just take a lot of work? You know this.
Yeah.
And so I've been like, my assistant, I was like, hey, maybe we'll just pause or maybe we'll just cancel it. And that was the thing where it's like, that could have been the message. Like, oh, you know what? God was right. Time to just throw in the towel. And I was like, screw you. I am doing this and I'm going to go next level and I'm going to get better and I'm going to listen to every single one of my episodes and I'm going to figure out how to get better and how to have better interviews and better conversations. But that was a reminder to let it be easy. I go, how am I complicating this?
I think if we look at the data and the stats and the reviews and other people's numbers and there is so much information out there. And I think there's like the signal and the noise, right? There's always going to be a lot of noise, but what can't be replicated is the fact that for individuals with individual thoughts, lenses with which you see the world, footprints, faces, I mean, everything, like it's who we are. And we all have this divine mission. Everyone's is different. But we know what it is. And all the stuff that can happen outside of us, all the tech stuff, all the glitches, that's not really my responsibility to manage those things. But my energy, what I put out there, if I'm going to do my job today, like that's up to me. And stuff will always go wrong. And there'll be people who try to discredit you. I mean, if you've been around, like I even heard Taylor Swift say recently, or there was a snippet, it said, a woman said to her, I want to be a singer. What's your advice? And she said, get a good lawyer. That was her first. She was like, because she's being sued for all sorts of things. I mean,
Taylor Swift is?
See, there you go. Yeah, it's like no blessings come without some form of persecution. You can't just have all the upside without the shadow. So I almost like expect challenges. Like I expect disappointments. And I think even if, just say that there's a collaboration that's been verbally agreed on and then it's not happening. You go, okay, that's okay. I can control all the action, but if I'm going to be attached to everything, then I'm going to be miserable. And that's not why I'm here.
Oh, what a good lesson.
It's like there's a difference between desire and attachment, and we get them confused. We think I want something. That's different to I have to have something. And we can have so much fun in the engagement of things and playing around and, really just being in the momentum of it. And then the attachment is only where the suffering is, right? Like it has to be a yes. This person has to, have me. This person, must do this by this date. I can only do my part. And luckily, you can keep very busy doing your part if you stay in the right spirits. There's never a shortage of creativity. Like there's always going to be more. I just think like I can control what I can control, and that's more than enough.
That's true. And, the whole legal stuff, it's hilarious because I faced my first ever lawsuit years ago when I got sued for wrongful dismissal. I talk about it on this show. And man, that beat me up because it was an insult, first of all. Yeah. Then I was like, I've never been through this before. How long does this take? How much does this cost? Like, who knows about this? Oh gosh, people know about this. And like, what does that say about me? And there were certain things I couldn't control, but I hung on to stuff for too long. So like, podcast thing, like I'm hanging on to that. It's like, no, Renee, let it go. There might be some people that look at these statistics and they have an opinion of your show, but it's great and it's going to get better. And what was I going to say? Oh, how this comes back to PR too is when you start pitching. And so most often you'll get silence. You'll get nothing. Then you'll get the hard nose. I've received unsubscribe in capital bold red letters. I've received no, absolutely not. And I'm like, oh, thank you for letting me know, though. Sometimes those replies are better than nothing at all.
Oh, no, so Renee, I joke that I'm rejection proof. Like I believe that all rejection is self-rejection. Ooh. Right. So if someone's rejecting me by saying no, thank you, or this is a pass or whatever, unsubscribe in red letters, that's not that's a name in an inbox. Like woman says words on internet. Like
Yeah.
mean anything. It's like, I'm telling a story. I'm not good enough. Oh my God, everything's over. I'm not going to. It's like, no, so words on internet via email. So what? Like there's never a shortage. I think I always go back to every single person who's rejected me too. Always. I'm like, just because you said no doesn't mean I'm going to stop. Like what? And why would I make it about me? Often it's not the right timing, or maybe someone's, I don't know, dealing with a visa bill they can't afford. They've just burnt the chicken. Their toddler's screaming. Like, I don't know. My ego would be running the show if I was making everything so personal.
That's true.
We're all here with the same goal. We want to add value to people. Editors and contributors have that's the exact same mission, right? It's like the audience first. And so I can remain always aligned in that. And maybe we're not aligned in the same moment, but that's got nothing to do with me and nothing to do with my worth. So I think, oh, how funny. They think I might stop. Like, I'm like, sometimes I go, bummer. Yeah. Like I thought this is a really good one. But one time with Oprah magazine, I followed up 3 times. My policy is twice. I followed up 3 times and I'm like, you know what? I just have a feeling about this one. And I said, look, at the sake of following up 1 time too many, I really believe that this is a piece that's going to add value. And I linked to another piece that was kind of along the same lines. And I said, look, I can turn this around for you a week. I'll do it for the byline only. And like, what do you think? And she was like, I just had back surgery. She's like, I'll take it.
Wow.
But imagine if I were like, oh, Naomi at Oprah, she's just mean. She's cold. She doesn't get back to any, like, no, it's like, I don't know what's going on with her, but I can control my part and I'm allowed to do that. Like I'm allowed to, so long as I don't I joke, I might get a restraining order. Hasn't happened yet, but even that wouldn't kill me. But, okay, great. Hit me with an RSO. Cool. Like nothing will happen to me. I'll still be in perfect health. So like, what's the big deal? I think we need a bit of perspective too and a bit of a sense of humor, Renee. I swear.
Well, you would definitely define that. You're like, slap me with a restraining order. I don't care.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll stop now, but when does this expire?
But I love that. And what the example here is that you had conviction.
Yes.
In your story. You had conviction in what it is that you wanted to share with that audience. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us have that, but we just don't go that extra mile.
We're a bit too sensitive. I think we're a bit too sensitive.
Yeah, totally.
Right. We make it about us. And that herein lies the problem, right? When it's about us, everyone can just tell, I think, versus, what do I have to share? I find that a lot of people who I've helped, they're telling stories that they have to tell them. Like they'll go to a street corner and speak it. Like they'll say, don't do this for your health, or make sure you don't get ripped off by this. Or, my son went through that and yours doesn't have to. Like he went through cyberbullying. Like you can feel it. And I just think, well, when that remains the goal, then like when your why is clear, like the how is easy. Because there are strategies and tactics and pitches, and look, it's up to the hilt. All the information is there, but what's within you?
Yeah,
like that.
Sometimes that's hard to. The hard part too is,
but it's also the good news, right? It's also like the good news. It's like, the good news. It's up to me. Oh, I can do it. Oh, I'm the problem. Oh, I'm also the solution. Yeah, so.
Man, do you talk to yourself? I could just imagine just a day in your head. It'd be so much fun.
I've trained myself, because it's so easy to go the other way, right? It's so easy to like tell yourself a bummer story each day. For me, I'm intentional. Yes.
Yeah, you are definitely, you just can't help but be fully inspired and feel good around you. Even though I think I can lean my chin on top of your head.
Lucky you.
Over there.
Rub it in, Renee.
Okay. This has been amazing. I have one last question for you. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
A wild woman. I just love the question and I love the word wild. It's to be free. Right. For me, it's to be free. And there is no better feeling than freedom. In fact, I think anything that we want, anything, if it's a money, a partner, a boat, like whatever it is, it's because you think it will make you feel free.
Did you say a boat?
Yeah. Some people are like, I want a yacht. I want a this. I want a that. It's like, so you can feel free.
Totally.
You know, so for me, wild means free and freedom. And what an incredible podcast you have, Renee. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. I love you. Okay. So
I love you.
If people want to go online to find you, where can they go?
I would say the best resources, free resources are at susie-moore.com. I'd start there, click around, see what takes your fancy.
Lots of good stuff on there.
Yes.
Amazing stuff. I'll put those links below as well as your social. So go follow her. But Susie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Renee. Until next time. Mwah. So much love.